Rachel,
Yeah,
how you doing?
I'm not doing bad. Normal Wednesday.
Yeah. I guess that's not so bad, right?
Now, second podcast, did a webinar this morning. So today is like my day of like all the recordings. I'm here
You
for it.
are a very busy woman. I'm doing a lot of research on you. You have a
Uh,
lot going for you. Congratulations. That's pretty
uh,
amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. There's different ends to look at it from always. I do wish it was a bit more in person.
Yeah.
Everything's so virtual now.
Mm.
That would be the only thing I would change. Other than that, blessed for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know it also allows for someone like me to connect with you.
Good.
And I'm actually really, really excited for this one. I have been looking to speak to somebody about this for probably a couple of years. And I've been following you now for quite some time, and I appreciate you accepting my invite. I think I hit the nail on the head with you. I'm really excited to get your story. I've heard it, but I'm excited to hear it again. I'm excited to ask more questions about it. And, gut health is something that I think so many of us hear so many times. We don't really necessarily know what it is or how it affects me. And I do believe actually this is something that I'm kind of dealing with and I don't really know where to start. And so this podcast is not only going to help so many other people, I actually genuinely believe it's going to help me.
Mm. I
Um,
thought we were doing it. This was such a good intro. I'm like, wait, are we starting?
yeah,
I
why
was like
not?
preparing. I
Why
was
not? Let's
preparing.
let's roll. Let's roll. Why not?
Cool.
Why the hell not? Right. But Rachel, you are a functional medicine nutritionist. You are a podcast host, as you were just talking about, and a fitness model. You have a lot going for you. So like I said, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with me. And I also noticed in your busy schedule, you are coming to Raleigh on March 10th through 11th, and that is right down the street from me. So I want just curious to know what's going on in Raleigh in just what is it, a month and a half now?
Wait, I'm about to ask you what's happening in Raleigh.
You're speaking. I saw it. I saw it
So
on your Instagram.
in Raleigh. Oh, you're talking about the mastermind that I'm
Correct.
speaking at. Okay. So part of having a busy schedule, I live by my schedule. And thank God I have Becky who schedules everything.
She's fantastic.
I just show up and I'm there and I'm like, this is awesome. Let's
I
go.
could use a Becky.
But I'm like, wait a minute, what is happening in Raleigh? I'm super excited to speak up. My good friend Amberly Lago is putting on a mastermind out there, and I'm speaking on all things entrepreneurship
Oh, that's
and
amazing.
how to really create the life, the business of your dreams, how to live an abundance life. A lot of people know me for all things gut health, functional medicine, but entrepreneurship and just overall abundance and creating the life you want is something I'm also very passionate about. So I'm honored to get to speak and share the gut side of creating my business from my passion, from my pain, and really how I've been able to create a multiple seven-figure business out of it, fully organic and very much mission focused. People hear the money, they hear the numbers, and they're like, "Ooh, that's awesome." If it for me, if it was about the money, I would have quit. I promise you, a long time ago. I would have quit a long time ago because when it's about that, it's not enough to really
Mhm.
keep you going. So I'm where I'm at really today because of the mission, the purpose behind it. And I also think God's hand has played also a massive role in all of this and has been working through me on the gut side and now even far above and beyond that with the impact that I get to make in other people's lives. So
Mhm.
one of my favorite verses, by the way, I'm a Christian, if you didn't figure that
Yeah,
out by
no,
now,
no.
is 2:18. And it talks a lot about how we go through these trials and these struggles in order so we can help other people who are going through the same things. So it had to
Mhm.
happen for me, so it can happen for them. And that's really the philosophy that I live by. So really it's just sharing that story pretty much.
Yeah, you took a really rough situation from what I hear in your speaking videos and stuff, and really obviously turned that into a massive positive, not just for you, but for so many people. And I know you just read a verse. I kind of want to read a few tweets that you posted on Instagram real
Go for
quick
it.
because
Do it.
they stuck with me.
Okay.
And you know how many cliche things that we read on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. It's just like the same old, same old. But you actually had a few posts that was like, you made me either like chuckle and like, that's very clever, or I actually like really appreciated that. One of them, I really appreciate this one. You posted this not too long ago. Said eating unhealthy is so common that the moment someone starts to eliminate sugar and processed foods and instead eat real whole foods is instantly labeled as restrictive.
Mm-hmm.
I do you come up with this? I mean, because that is just like you put a lot of my thoughts into a very simple tweet right there. And I was like, I eat healthy, but people kind of like shame me for it, or like get on me for it. And I saw this and I was like, what the hell? Like it
Yeah.
made me think for a moment.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, right?
It
That
really is.
a minority now to care about the foods that you're putting into your body, to eat actual real whole food. And I see online as a dietitian myself, a lot of other nutritionists or dietitians or people who think they're a nutritionist for whatever reason and wants to give nutrition advice, really
Mhm.
preaching this whole thing about self-love, which I think is not really about self-love, but I love the intention behind it of what I think they're trying to say. But they're trying to say, like, don't overly restrict yourself, enjoy yourself, and yes, we want to enjoy yourself. We want to enjoy life, but you can't do that
Mhm.
if you're overweight, if you're inflamed, if your gut is a wreck, if, the reason as to why you are eating a lot of these foods is coming from a place of numbing in the first place, which is the reality of why most of the population of America is overweight and obese, is because not only is our food industry cared nothing about our health, and our health industry cares nothing about food. So we have this whole misconception that's happening right now about, you know, dieting and dieting being restrictive, but it's not a diet at all, if this makes sense of what I'm
Mhm.
kind of saying. But now people, when they actually start to cut out so much of this food that is processed, that is, just our norm now, they instantly say this is restrictive. This is restrictive. This is not self-love. Self-love is just eating the foods that you want to because you love yourself, because life's about enjoyment. And I don't want to live a life full of restriction. And I'm like, hey, trust me, I sometimes eat foods that aren't perfect, right? But we really have to look at the situation as a whole, right? And we are in an epidemic of chronic health issues, of diabetes, of obesity, of all of these things that are not any other reason but for diet and lifestyle conditions.
Mhm.
And then we're treating these lifestyle related diseases and conditions with medication instead of actually getting to the true root cause, which is why I'm so passionate about functional medicine and really taking a root cause approach. And a lot of that comes down to, one, the relationship we have with ourselves, the food that we're putting into our body, our lifestyle, or stress. And yeah, it's unfortunate that we label it as restrictive, as diet culture. And I even see anti-diet dietitians out there nowadays. I'm not sure if you've seen that at all. And again, I think it's coming from a place of wanting to, try to help people. I truly think the intention is coming from a good place, but we really have to look truly what's happening overall. Most people aren't overly restricting. And now there are those kind of people, and they're not restricting like real whole food. What we're saying is, let's start to eat real whole food.
Mhm.
That's all we're saying.
I think part of the issue too is, I think you would agree with this, is that we have to unlearn so many things. We not just have to teach people the right things, we also have to unlearn. Like, think of all the things that we were taught growing up that were just completely incorrect, as the science is starting to show now. It's so hard to teach people new ways and new habits, let alone to have them unravel everything they've been doing their whole lives and then start a whole new path. And people just don't want to do it because they're just not comfortable with it.
Oh yeah. I mean, if we think of like the old food pyramid of like what
Yeah,
that was, like the whole
exactly.
base of it was eating processed foods, breads and pasta and
Cereals.
carbohydrates. And then like, look where that got us ultimately. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's all backwards. It's warped right now. And, when we preach health from a national level, what we really preach is medication. We preach, getting on a diet. We don't talk about really real whole food, getting back to the basics. If I were to say, my diet aligns with any kind of diet out there, I'd say it's more on like the paleo side
Hmm.
of everything. And I even had somebody ask me before, they're like, what do you think is the most optimal diet? Because there's no diet that is one size fits all. And I'm like, you're right. There are different kind of amounts of foods and things that work better for each person. Like we have to take that into consideration overall. But the best diet is going to be real whole food any day.
Hmm.
Any day. And the person looked at me like, that's actually probably the best answer I got, because they expect most people to say like the keto diet is the best diet or low carb or what, I don't even know all the diets out there nowadays. You could probably name a ton of them. And people ask me about them. I'm like, why? Like, we make it so much harder than it has to be.
I agree 100%. And I want to go down this road so deeply about talking about this, but I want to get into your story of gut health and the issues that you were having and where your business was born from. I'm super interested to hear this straight from you.
Yeah. All right. So, man, why I'm so passionate about gut health is really important for everybody to understand where I really came from. And fitness for me has always been a part of my life. For some people, it's not a big part of their life. But for me, it always has been. It's been my escape, it's been my therapy. I did not grow up in the best home, and that's a whole nother kind of story. But for me, that was like where I had my safe place. I was a gymnast and I was a dancer. So for me, I actually learned to get a lot of my own validation through fitness at a very young age. So that was my sense of worth. I felt safe in dance and gymnastics. I felt safe when I was achieving in some way, shape, or form. And for me, that led me down the path of, okay, I kind of want to learn a little bit about nutrition. I want to learn about dietetics, and I started to work on bodybuilding, getting in the gym. I was dating a guy at the time who was actually into bodybuilding. And that was where I picked up weightlifting. And it was like the first time in my life I was like, man, like I feel very confident in my body. Like I was changing physically my body and I was pushing myself in a way that I hadn't experienced since when I was a young girl, dance and gymnastics and all of that. And I fell in love with it so much that I literally wanted to make an entire career out of this. I was like, people need to know about this. People need to start lifting weights. They need to start making fitness a priority. And right, that's what happens with a lot of people is they get into fitness and they see what it does for their body. It becomes kind of a new part of their identity. For me, it literally was my identity
Hmm.
from a little girl, dance, gymnastics, and then into bodybuilding. And it started off very, very healthy, honestly. And I grew my social media following to about 250,000, maybe a little bit less than that, even because actually it's at 250,000 now, but grew, well over 200,000. Getting into fitness modeling. I was the cover of bodybuilding.com. I was the cover of Train magazine. I did a lot of different types of competition, competing at the national level. Did a lot of advertisement for Simply Shredded, which is a company that has, millions of followers online. And I became like the face of fitness in a lot of ways. And I know this may sound, actually, I would say interesting, but I feel like it makes sense now. But as I continued to go down this path, I really started to feel less and less connected with myself. I started to place even more of my own sense of worth and validation in the physical body in a lot of ways. So I got to probably, I don't know, 8% body fat, which is insanely lean for a female.
Hmm.
But I was praised for all of this, right? I was praised. Oh my gosh, the most fit person ever. Cover of magazines. Like it was an addiction now for me at this point, but it was publicly praised. Kind of interesting, right? And I think we have a lot of these addictions out there that are publicly praised. perfectionism, type A, workaholics, anything achievement wise. There are these publicly praised addictions. And for me, it was sort of an addiction. I didn't realize this at the time of my life. And after competing now at the national level, getting ready to become pro, that was like my dream at that point in my life. I wanted to become a pro bodybuilder for, I don't know, whatever reason, just something I was trying to prove to myself. I started to get sick. And I started to first battle, a little bit of some GI issues. I was a little bit bloated. I had some stomach cramping, but it continued to get worse and worse and worse. I lost my menstrual cycle and I did what most people would do. I went to the doctor, right? Something's off in my body. Okay, I don't have a menstrual cycle as a female. I should probably go to the doctor and I should get some answers. Right. So they do some very basic blood work and they say I should do a colonoscopy, endoscopy, and all of it comes back normal. Like, you're perfect health. Everything looks great. Thumbs up. Take a probiotic, Align. You can pick it up at Walgreens or CVS. And then, come back here maybe in a few months and we'll see how you're doing. That was like my answer that I was given. And then on top of that, they told me I just had IBS or irritable bowel syndrome, which is really a trash can diagnosis because it's like, yes, I know my gut is irritable. That's why I'm here. Help me figure out why. But I left there and I progressively got worse and worse. My hair started to fall out. My skin was a wreck. I became really, really depressed and anxious. And my gut issues were so extreme now at this point where I could actually no longer even use the restroom without doing an enema. And I know this is not so sexy, but I feel like I've talked about this so much now. I can just speak this on podcast, but I literally had to do an enema. They're like laxative stopped working for me. Like my motility in my gut completely came to a halt. And that's like terrible for your body. You got to be able to empty your bowels. I could go on a list of reasons as to why, but my gut was now off. And I even remember one night, like literally lying on the kitchen floor, just like bawling my eyes out and in so much pain and like afraid to eat now with food, but like knowing I needed to eat because I was really malnourished now at this point, and just feeling like I was at that rock bottom. Like I was like, this is not my life. And I remember even repeating that to myself one day, just laying in bed, and like I could feel even the emotions there, but like, this is not happening. This is not happening. Like, this is not my life. Like, why is this happening? I'm a fitness model. I'm a dietitian. I went to school for nutrition and dietetics. I've taken care of my health. I'm all about health and wellness, and I'm aesthetically like fit. Like, why is this happening? And being the determined person I am, I continue to search for answers. I even went to the Mayo Clinic. So I lived in Texas. I flew all the way up to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. They did a bunch of genetic testing. They did this whole thing where they put a balloon in your butt to see like if you can sense any of the like, I don't know, contractions there. Like they did all these kind of tests. Nothing. At this point, I'm put on, all the medications, thyroid medications, birth control. I'm put on antidepressants and nothing at this point.
Real quick, were these doctors like working with you? Were they perplexed but trying to help you? Or were they just kind of sending you home like, we don't know. Good luck.
In Texas, where I was at the time, they would send me to various specialists. And I think that's what's kind of unfortunate about Western medicine. It can be good when it's like in a very acute based issue, but when it's chronic issues, gut issues, autoimmune conditions, they tend to be like, oh, you should go over here for this and you should go over here for this. And then it's months and months and right before you can even get in to see any kind of specialist. And then you go to the Mayo Clinic and now, you've been going through this for a year with really no answers. The Mayo Clinic was supposed to be like top notch. And I think they're awesome. They're great. Again, girl with IBS, gut issues, who just has some hypothyroidism, and we put her on, birth control because of her lack of menstrual cycle. Okay, there's nothing really structurally wrong with her gut. I then went to a physician who recommended I go see a colorectal surgeon because he actually did a scan of my gut where he was showing my small intestine when I would stand up, literally falling into literally falling into the lower part of my abdomen. And he's like, okay, you should go see that maybe this is a structural issue. I get sent to a colorectal surgeon, and the guy looks at me, my mama, I had my ex boyfriend at the time, and is just like, hey, this is something, you have a floppy colon, meaning you can't pass stool through it very easily. This is something you were probably born with. And it's probably something you're going to continue to deal with for most of your life. But what we can do is we can actually cut out your small intestine or sorry, we can cut out your large intestine. You wouldn't want to cut out your small intestine. You can cut out your large intestine, your small intestine to your rectum. So you take out that entire large intestine. And because now the colon's not moving around, it's not that floppy colon. Now you'll be able to go to the restroom and problem is fixed. And what I thought was my rock bottom, I felt like, okay, now I'm at rock bottom. Like, this is my rock bottom. And I was like ready to get this surgery. Like, if
you were ready to do it, you were going to do it.
Oh, huh? For sure. I remember leaving and just being like, okay, when can we schedule it? Like, I was that desperate at the time. However, it wasn't like a quick thing, right? You couldn't just go and get under the knife and like that same day, like get your large intestine cut out. But that's where I can relate to people, and knowing how like desperate you can feel when you're at that really, really low place. So honestly, as we're scheduling this surgery, I had, weeks in between, and we're kind of going back and forth with the doctor. I didn't feel good about it. There was something that was off. I felt like there was another way. And that's really when I became obsessed, or now I should say addicted, another way, to learning everything about gut health. And I literally spent hours every single day, just learning everything that I could about the gut and the gut microbiome and these little microbes in our gut, how they're not just dormant, how they literally control the transit of food throughout our gastrointestinal tract. So our motility, how they play a role in our thyroid function, our hormones, our metabolism, our brain health. So anxiety, depression, all of these things, even the chronic bloating that I was experiencing on a day-to-day basis, the bacteria in your gut actually ferment, eat the foods that you're eating on a daily basis. And if you have any kind of dysbiosis, which is an imbalance of bacteria or bacteria overgrowth, something called SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, you will actually overly ferment a lot of even healthy foods, fibers, producing a large amount of gas, leading to bloating. Depending on that type of gas, it can actually even slow down the motility in the gut and lead to constipation, inability to go to the bathroom, chronic inflammation. For some people, if you pair that with, let's say, some intestinal permeability or leaky gut, this can now lead to systemic full body inflammation, neuro issues, and even an autoimmune condition at extreme cases. So I learned so much about the gut, and I'm like, nobody's talking about this. Nobody is talking about the gut microbiome. Now, this was also before on social media, gut health was something that was sexy, that bacteria and microbiome was something that was like a hot word. Right. I was in this, like, I don't know, like 5, 7, 8 years ago when I was just going through my gut issues and learning about all this stuff. And I ended up actually doing a stool microbiome test. I ended up doing a breath test, and I was able to self-diagnose that I had a ton of dysbiosis and SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, in my gut. And I started to figure out different approaches for addressing these microbiome imbalances in my body. Now, I could go into a rabbit hole of what that exact protocol looked like, but the short and the simple version is I ended up having to make massive dietary changes, putting myself on a restrictive healing diet is what I call it. For a period of time, I had to help kill off a lot of the bacteria overgrowth. I had to address a lot of the lifestyle, the stress factors. I had to go through different therapy in my life. And eventually, not in like a quick light switch type healing process, but in a slow process, I started to get better and better. And eventually I remember I just got to one day where I was like, I don't remember the last time I felt bloated, or I couldn't go to the bathroom, and I didn't have gut issues, and my cycle returned, and everything just started to improve. And that's the power of gut health. And I think that story just shares it with all of your listeners of like the power of our gut microbiome. And I know my story is like on the extreme side, like, oh my goodness, like I'm not in the place where I'm about to have my large intestine removed or everything that this girl went through, but it affects everybody. Everybody. If you're somebody who is dealing with anxiety, depression, skin issues, acne, rosacea, psoriasis, if you're somebody who has hormonal imbalances, PMS, PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, if you're somebody who is overweight, has chronic inflammation, all of these can actually be traced back to the gut. And when I take a gut centric approach to healing with my clients, because that is what I did with myself, we start to see all of these things improve. Instead of just addressing the symptoms, you have anxiety. Here's an anxiety medication. You can't go to the bathroom. Here's a laxative. Okay, you're overweight. There's a million different things we could go into for that right now. Like it's treating one of the core root causes instead.
All right. I have a lot of questions.
Good.
My first one would be, did you go back to that doctor and did you give him a middle finger?
No, I should though, but I don't think I cared enough. Yeah.
I'm like, yo, you almost took out my intestine, man. Like, get out of here. Get out of here with that.
Well, he does that all day, right? And if you go to, let's say, somebody and that's their job, they're going to give you that is the solution too.
True. But yeah, I do have a lot of like more serious questions. So what was causing this issue in the first place? Because you said that you were like the face of fitness. Fitness was your life. It was your identity, which seems to have been somewhat an issue in the first place. Was it what you were eating at that point? Or was it the stress? What was causing this issue?
Right. So a lot of people would actually say the root cause was SIBO dysbiosis, which led to all of these things, meaning that it was the bacteria imbalances in my gut. But we both know that's not the true root cause, because if we peel back the onion a bit more, it's the root cause of the root cause. And why did the gut become off in the first place? And that's really what questions we want to start asking. And we talked about at the beginning how most disease comes down to lifestyle factors, right? There's really three big stressors that can cause the body to become off: emotional stressors, dietary stressors. I said that weird, stressors. And then it can also be environmental stressors. It's normally one of those three. And for a lot of people, it's a combination. And I can break down what those three mean. So dietary stressor, probably most people kind of know what this would mean, but it could be one, your diet is just not good. You're eating a ton of processed foods, inflammatory foods. These will wreak havoc on your gut microbiome, not only by causing inflammation, because it's an inflammatory food, leading to intestinal permeability, which causes food sensitivities, immune dysregulation. But these foods also feed bad bacteria in our gut and can lead to different kinds of bacteria overgrowth. But also even diet foods. So artificial sweeteners, sucralose, a lot of the diet foods that our culture now promotes also are bad for our gut. And when I was kind of like comp prep type diet, I had a lot of diet foods. I won't say I had a lot of inflammatory foods in my diet, but I had a lot of these diet foods, right? Pre-workouts and post-workouts and these protein powders, which are pretty big in the fitness industry, full of gums, emulsifiers, artificial sweeteners, which feed bacteria in your gut. So I had a lot of those in my diet. And I will also mention here too, so from the dietary stressor side, this could also be like a food allergy, celiac disease, something like that can also cause the gut to become off. So that could be a dietary stressor. Emotional stressors could be, it could be chronic work stress, not getting enough sleep. You go through a terrible breakup, a divorce, a death. It's not a coincidence that we see a lot of gut issues or other chronic health issues come about after a major life experience, because of what that really does to the nervous system in a lot of ways. This can also be unaddressed trauma in the body. So the brain doesn't really know the difference between a stressor now or it's just being triggered to a stressor that happened when we were a child or a little kid, that there's like this energy still stuck in the body and our nervous system gets dysregulated. So we have like a hyper vigilant nervous system because our gut and our brain are interconnected. So when we experience that stress, our gut shuts down and we stop producing any digestive enzymes to break down the food that we need. The motility in our gut comes to a halt. So if we have perceived stress, imbalanced nervous system, if we have chronic stress, we're not talking about acute stress, chronic stress all the time, then the gut can become off because it's not working. It's not working the way it needs to be working. Environmental stressors, this can be the toxic world that we live in. So foods filled of herbicides, pesticides, things like glyphosate. I test people at my practice for environmental toxins, toxic heavy metals, mercury, lead, mold, food-based molds found in things like coffee, rice, and for some people who are exposed to a lot of these toxins can actually really negatively impact the gut because we hold a lot of those in the gut. So I say root causes because normally for most people, it's not just one thing. It's a combination of a few of these. And let's just say, looking back at my life, I was under a lot of physical stress, actually. So physical stress, which was a form of like emotional stress too, where I was training pretty hard. I was at a very low percent body fat, 8%, 10% body fat. Because I was competing, so metabolically, I was in what we call a catabolic state where my body just like, it's in a breakdown state quite a bit. You're in that when you're that lean, which is what bodybuilders try to avoid. This hormone called cortisol, our body stress hormone. We want to avoid that like the hawk because we know it's catabolic, it breaks down muscle tissue, but we also don't think about cortisol. It also can break down our gut lining. Our gut lining is a muscle tissue and it's only one cell layer thick. So if cortisol is chronically elevated, this is not only going to shut down the gut because we're in that stress state, but it actually can eventually break down the gut lining. So physical stress, emotional stress, the pressure I was just putting myself under. I mean, when you're competing, people are literally judging you on stage for how you look. The statement like nobody's judging you for how you look, everybody's judging you for how you look, and you're naked on stage and they're like pointing out every little imperfection about you, like, ooh, your glute ham tie-in of like where your butt connects to your hamstrings is not as defined as it should be, so you get a low score. Like that is like the right. Like it's so, looking back, it's so toxic and it's trying to please a judge, right? Too, it's like these 4 people who get to really define if you have a perfect body. Kind of messed up. Bodybuilding. And a lot of bodybuilders have mental health issues, anxiety, depression, low confidence, right? Because so much of their validation comes from their body, comes from what everybody else thinks of them, comes from a trophy of how perfectly chiseled is their body. So that was my life, full of like the fitness type food, some emotional stress, and definitely some unaddressed trauma thrown in there in the mix of it all, where I think all of that combined created this perfect whirlwind where my body just kind of had it. Like my gut, I wouldn't say shut down, but the motility stopped really working. It slowed down. My thyroid slowed down metabolically because of everything I was doing in my life. Same with my hormones. And as a byproduct with the foods I was eating and the stress, I got bacteria overgrowth in my gut, dealing with the bloating and all the other issues.
Now, you said you self-diagnosed, and I want to get there in a moment because I want to give people an insight of how to get answers to their questions. You mentioned sucralose and the protein powders and stuff like that, and I started to smile because I had this conversation 2 days ago with my wife when we were looking at labels of all these different protein powders, and we're drinking this stuff like every day. And it's like all these gums and sucralose and stuff is in like every like one of them. For somebody that's in the fitness industry and someone that does what you do and clearly looks the way you look, what is like a protein powder or a supplement or anything with like protein? What's your protocol? What's your go-to?
One, I don't do pre-workout anymore. Coffee, bulletproof, mold-free coffee is my pre-workout if I ever need a little caffeine, and electrolytes. I love the Elementi electrolytes. They have a
I
little,
get element all the time. I love
yeah,
element.
a little bit of
Yeah.
stevia in it. Like that's my pre-workout. In terms of like protein powders, I love a good whey isolate. You just have to be really, really picky of the whey isolate. I use Paleo Valley's whey isolate. It's the first one that I've been able to tolerate. In terms of amino acid composition, whey protein is always going to be the trump, right? If you can tolerate it, okay. If you get a pure whey isolate without concentrate or anything like that, a grass-fed option, again, gum-free, artificial sweetener-free. A lot of people will tolerate it unless it is specifically a whey issue. But what I find is a lot of people don't tolerate whey protein, not because of always the whey, because of everything else that's in it to go along with it that can lead to the bloating and the gut issues. So that's always my first choice if you can tolerate whey, at least in terms of body composition. Love Paleo Valley. And another option I then tend to gravitate towards is a beef isolate protein in terms of amino acid composition. So we're really looking through getting a good amount of the branch chain aminos, leucine, isoleucine, valine. These are going to be the best amino acids to support skeletal muscle mass. So a beef isolate, a whey isolate are going to be the best types of proteins. Now, plant-based proteins will have these amino acids. They just don't have them in the same amount. And that's really the biggest argument that we see in like the vegan world, plant-based world, is you can get all of the same protein from plants, right? You can get similar in the same amino acids. You just don't get them in the same quantity per amount
Okay.
is really what we're looking at. So plant-based proteins can be fine as an alternative if you can't tolerate the other two. But I'd say for most, you can find a really good beef isolate, that has a stevia and without the gums and everything in it.
This is why I love having my own podcast, because I get to hit the pause button and ask these questions I've been dying to know for so freaking long, because every time I'm Googling this stuff, I'm getting different answers. I'm not getting, everyone's top 10 or top 20 is different, and they all have like gums in it. And, it's like sweet, it tastes amazing, right? But it's like anything that tastes this amazing probably isn't like the best for you to drink every single day. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this stuff is incredible. But another question I had before we get back into the gut health is milks. I'm hearing almond milk comes out and it's like this mind-blowing thing. Everyone's like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is crazy. This is amazing. And now I'm hearing all the stuff and like almond milk that's like terrible for you. What do you do for like a milk or a milk substitute, if anything?
I sometimes use almond milk, but I'm picky. It's kind of like
Okay.
protein powders, right? Protein powders can be good. Protein powders can be bad.
Yeah.
I think the same thing with almond milk, right? So there are a lot of not so great almond milk brands.
Yeah.
And if you look at the back of the ingredients, they're watered down and they use a good amount of gums in them. So xanthan gum, guar gum to try to create this milk-like consistency. So you're really drinking, if you notice, they're like 30 calories per cup.
Right.
Almonds are pretty fatty. Like there's a good amount of fats in them. So 30 calories per cup, but getting that milk-like consistency, what does that tell you? That tells you there's a good amount of gums in there to create that thick consistency. Now, I'll use some brands. Milk, M-A-L-K, is actually a great brand. I think there's another one called Three Trees, which is kind of like a blend of different kind of nuts. And they don't use any gums, but one thing you'll notice is it's about 130 calories per cup. It's more calorie dense because they're creating the thickness actually from the fats. It's a bit more expensive because you're actually getting more of the actual nutrition. It's literally just almonds in water and maybe a little bit of vanilla extract if you get the vanilla version, blend it up. Like that's it.
Why can't everything just be like that? Like, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
I know it's a different conversation.
Quick, convenient. How can we make as much money as possible? And that's what the food industry is about. Is they just want to make money. They literally want everybody to be addicted to, like, they literally engineer their foods with the perfect combination of salty and sweet. They have people like that is their full-time job to get you to be addicted to their foods.
We're just set up to fail. I actually really believe that.
We're set up to be controlled.
Yeah, there you go. That's
in a lot of
even
ways.
better. Yeah. And not to put you on the spot here, but like, are you familiar with Fairlife? Do you know anything about Fairlife? What are your thoughts on that?
Fairlife, I haven't dabbled in that for a while. Fairlife is the lactose-free milk.
Yeah. Yep. It's like filtered. Yeah.
I think it can be okay if you can tolerate dairy. I'd say as people get older, a lot of people can lose the enzyme to break down dairy, and it kind of depends. Like lactose, for one, is like the milk sugar. But then there's actual more so like the milk protein. So there's the milk protein and the milk sugar. They're a little bit different. If you tolerate, fine. I see no problem with it at all. Um, so it's just really seeing if that works okay for you. I tend to do okay with dairy. I don't do it a ton. I'll use maybe a little bit of yogurt. I use ghee and butter, and that's about it.
Okay. This is awesome. I told you I have a million questions for you. Okay, so let's go back to your story. You said self-diagnosed. How the hell do you self-diagnose this?
Well, I will say I became certified in functional medicine, and I did not mention that.
Awesome.
So
That's
I
so
received
awesome.
my degree in nutrition science and dietetics from Baylor University. So I started off on the dietetic side, wanting to be more on the fitness side of dietetics. Worked in clinical for some time, more so in the pediatric side. Hated that because I was giving people nutrition advice who didn't want it. And then after my own health issues, in going through this and learning so much about gut health and the gut microbiome, I became certified in functional medicine. And that's where I was able to run a lot of these on lab testing and see visually in a lot of my microbiome tests and through breath tests, which looks at how much hydrogen or methane your body is producing after you eat different kinds of carbohydrates, to see if you have bacteria overgrowth, because the bacteria are producing usually those two types of gases, hydrogen or methane gas. I tested positive on the breath side, and I saw visually in my gut microbiome test that I had a ton of dysbiosis that was happening there, intestinal permeability. So therefore, I was able to make the conclusion I have SIBO, I have bacteria dysbiosis based off of testing. Now, what a lot of people do is they self-diagnose though based off of Dr. Google, right? So they read the symptoms of SIBO and then they say, I have SIBO, and they self-diagnose in that way. And that's not what I'm talking about here. I did testing. I actually became certified in functional medicine. I also had my background in a good amount of this, more on the nutrition side, which allowed me to get into this field. And then I ran testing to get the answers. I did not go on to Dr. Google and say, my symptoms align with SIBO and dysbiosis based off of what I read. I think I have SIBO, so I'm going to treat myself for SIBO, because if you do that, you can actually make a lot of things worse. So testing and actually looking at what is off is very necessary.
Okay, so if I wanted to go test, which I actually do genuinely, what's my next step? Where do I go?
You come to me.
I love that. This is why you're an entrepreneur. Okay, so let's just say I want to work with you. What do we do? What are we doing?
All right. So we run all the tests, right? So I talk a lot about the gut, and I take a gut centric approach, but we want to look at everything. And I created the approach that I wish that I had. And I actually see a lot of people who go to, functional medicine physicians because they know about functional medicine, who still don't get the same approach, because we're very heavy on the nutrition and the coaching side. And you're really looking at the big picture of what is going on. So first, before the testing, we get a really good in-depth look of what are the symptoms, what are your goals, what is going on with your current diet, what does that look like, what does your daily routines look like, sleep, stress, supplements, medications you're on, past history, a history of antibiotics, things like that, to really get a full picture of what's going on. And then we order all the testing. It's blood, urine, stool, saliva testing. I always wonder if I forget some, but basically we get pretty much everything from you that we can. The stool test, that's the microbiome test. So we have to look at all the bacteria. We look for gut pathogens, parasites, yeast overgrowth. We look at your probiotics, good bacteria you could be low in. We look at if there's any kind of bad bacteria or bacteria that can be causing more inflammation, the ratios of bacteria in your gut based off of what they should be, based off of various standards that have been set. Digestive enzymes, how well you're absorbing carbs, fats, and protein, your immune system, if you have intestinal permeability. So we get a ton of information just from a little itty bitty sample of stool to see what is going on with your gut. You won't get that actually even going to a gastroenterologist. They will not run a comprehensive stool test on you. That is only on the functional medicine side that they even do that. Along with that, blood work, we look at your full thyroid. We look at all of your full hormone tests, actually how you're metabolizing all of your hormones, because it's not just if you're making them or you're not. You actually have to metabolize your hormones and detoxify them through the liver, your estrogens. You convert things like testosterone into other hormones like DHT. So we want to look at how you're metabolizing your hormones. We'll look at your blood sugar, inflammation markers. What else? We'll look at toxins, heavy metals, and then we'll even do a full adrenal test, a cortisol test to see how stress is playing a role. So very comprehensive testing. And then what me and my team do is, along with your history, is we say what is off in the body, gut, hormones, thyroid, the big picture. What are potential root causes? Could this be the parasite? Could this be potentially like you have a deficiency a little bit? Could this be you're pretty inflamed? And then asking the question, where is this coming from? Diet, what could be playing a role? And we correct the systems in the order that they occur, starting with the gut, but addressing what caused the gut to be off in the first place. So oftentimes that's like a healing gut protocol. Sometimes some supplements in there, but it's really customized to each person.
I genuinely love this. It's a real look under the hood of what's going on in your body.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you just wish like everything was like that? Like,
yeah,
like
so I made my own.
Freaking, that's amazing. I'm like sitting here thinking like, you had a really shitty situation, but look, damn. I mean, damn, look what that turned into. It's just a whole like different level. I don't even know if people know that this exists. I think that's the thing too, is we got to educate people. This is even a possibility. Like, I just learned a lot from you. Did I think half of that was available? Maybe. But there's a lot of that you just mentioned. It was like, you're kind of blowing my mind as you're talking. It's like, who doesn't want to do that? Even if you're healthy, it's like, don't you just want to at least know that you're healthy too? But
we also then do the customized nutrition for everybody, and we create it with you. We don't just say, here, follow this. Like, we're customizing it. We're answering the questions. We're tweaking and modifying it to the routine. And then my team is coaching you through the entire process. So that's why our process is really fail proof, and why people who even go to, like I said, let's say a functional physician who says, hey, let's run some testing. Here's what's off. Here's the medication still. Here's just some supplements to take. They still aren't really getting the full healing that they want. Like, this is really what somebody needs in order to heal. And I only know that because I've been through it. Now,
would you say, let's just say someone is perhaps, I don't know, maybe a little overweight or slightly overweight or whatever, and they want to come talk to you and do all this gut health stuff. Do you think that they would perhaps even get in a better shape and or lose weight because of doing all this stuff too? Would that be like a nice like side effect? Is that a possibility?
Oh, for sure. Everything's going to improve, right? And we're going to look at the big picture. Okay, where's your body composition at, right? If you're overweight, you're already inflamed. If you are overweight, you have extra adipose tissues beyond what you should be. I bet you that your gut microbiome is not going to look good. I could guarantee this because I've been doing that for a really, really long time. Because one, you're overeating. Or you're not exercising enough, but most of the time we're overeating. For a lot of people, they're not eating real whole food a whole lot. They're eating a lot of processed foods, which we know those processed foods are going to be feeding different kinds of bacteria in our gut and probably leading to inflammation in the gut. So in order for us to heal the gut, we actually have to improve diet, nutrition. We probably do have to lose weight because extra adipose tissue is actually an inflammatory condition. Okay. So they're 100%. We're going to address the whole person instead of like just the one area.
Oof. What are some of like the real killers that you just consistently see? I know you mentioned the gums. What else are people eating or intaking or ingredients or something like that? Just
gut killers.
Yeah.
Canola oil, vegetable oils, industrial seed oils. So any oil that comes from a seed. And I actually had a physician explain this to me recently who came on my podcast, Dr. Hemingway. And I always knew like canola oil and vegetable oils were bad. Avoid them. They cause massive inflammation in the body. But he really explained it in a way that I thought was great for people to understand. So if you think of a seed, right? It takes a lot to really press that seed to get oil out of it. Think of like a sunflower seed or anything. Like, you got to do a lot of work to get the oil out. Now think of like an olive or an avocado. It's like a light press, and there would be oil that would come out of an avocado. So when we go through this really, really intense process to extract these oils out of seeds, which canola oil is rapeseed. It's like scary, just even with the name, rapeseed oil. I'm like, why would you want to eat that anyway? It creates this oxidized inflammatory fat that's high in omega-6s, which causes systemic inflammation throughout the body. And I run an omega-3 and omega-6 index on every single one of our clients who comes to us. So omega-3s are the opposite, anti-inflammatory fats. Get your omega-3 fats from fish oils, fatty cuts of fish. And I would say about 8 out of 10 people are deficient in their omega-3 fats, and they're in an excess over what they should be in their omega-6 fats, especially arachidonic acid, which is the main omega-6 fat that comes from canola oil or other type of seed oils. And what that does, when that's skewed, low omega-3s, omega-6s, not only does this cause inflammation throughout the entire body, which is the root cause of a lot of disease, two, our omegas are one of the few fats or even micronutrients that can cross through the blood-brain barrier. So if you can kind of think of our blood-brain barrier, this is kind of like think of it like a club, right? Like everybody wants to get into the club, but there's bouncers at the club, and like there's very few people that like can go in the club, but like the omegas, they get to go to like front of the line, and the bouncers are like, come on in every single time. So those are your omega fats, and they actually are in a direct ratio of what's in your brain. Your brain loves omega-3 fats, and it loves omega-6 fats. The problem is that we're getting way too much of them. It's not bad. Canola and vegetable oil definitely are bad, but we also get omega-6s from like beef, from animal protein. It's the overabundance and these skewed amounts of the omega-3s and the omega-6 fats, and then getting a lot of those industrial seed oils and vegetable oils.
So I started to become aware more recently about these oils, just like the last few months. It is absolutely crazy how many things are actually cooked in that, especially when you go out to eat. You think you're eating healthy and you're not. Do you know who Paul Saladino is? Do you follow him at all? Yeah. So I follow him, and I'm seeing his videos like all the time. And it's funny because my wife and I last week were like, well, after we go for a run, do you want to just stop at Whole Foods and go to the hot bar? We're like, yeah, we're thinking that's a positive.
Even theirs, right?
It's all cooked in these seed oils. And it's like, you can't get away from this.
Yeah.
You literally can't get away from this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I say you're like set up to fail, right? I mean, you think you're even eating healthy. You go to a place like Whole Foods, you think that's like top of the line, and it's just like you're set up to fail there. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What do you cook with? You cook with butter? You said ghee. Is that what it is?
Ghee or avocado oil normally.
Okay.
Ghee and avocado oil have a high cooking temperature. One of the big reasons why they use seed oils is because there's a high cooking temperature. It's also cheap. Canola oil is pretty cheap, so they can fry, they can cook at a high temperature. You actually don't want to cook at high temperature with olive oil. Like olive oil is a great fat, but it actually should be used for salad dressings, for low temperature cooking, because when you cook it at a high temperature, it actually can become oxidized, become a damaged fat, and now it's inflammatory. Jeez. So olive oil is good. We just don't want to cook it at a high temperature. So high temperature oils, avocado oil, and then ghee, my go-to.
Okay. I've been using avocado oil for a long time, so I appreciate knowing that. So thank you. I saw something posted on Instagram. I couldn't find it. I was browsing for it and ran out of time. But I remember you posted something. I am eating healthy, but still having gut issues. Like, what would be your like answer to that if I came to you and I said that, hey, listen, I'm eating healthy because I eat really healthy. Granted, I just told you all this damn sucralose crap I'm eating and stuff like that. What is your answer to somebody who says that to you? Obviously, besides let's look under the hood, what's your first thought when someone says that?
First thought would be, what's your definition of healthy, and getting clear on that. Okay. A lot of people will tell me they're eating healthy, and I really look at it, right? And it's maybe full of some things that are not so gut friendly overall. So that would be, the first and foremost, most important thing. Now, let's just say they are eating pretty whole food based diet. Like they are eating what my definition of healthy is, which is real whole foods. For I'd say 90%, 80% for some, 90% of their diet. Mm-hmm. Then I would say, well, there's something off in your gut. If you're eating healthy and you still have gut issues. And what's interesting is when your gut is already off, let's just say you have SIBO, dysbiosis, intestinal permeability, a lot of healthy foods, you actually can't digest and process very well anymore. So let's take SIBO, for example, bacteria overgrowth. When you have bacteria overgrowth in your gut, the bacteria are fermenting in excess of fibers in your diet. Well, there's fiber in a lot of healthy foods, like there's broccoli, asparagus, cauliflower. Think of all the cruciferous vegetables. Bacteria love cruciferous vegetables. They also love other things like garlic and onion, very healthy foods. These are healthy foods, don't get me wrong. But if you have a ton of bacteria overgrowth in your gut, these are very fermentable to the gut bacteria. So when this person eats these foods, they're going to get fermentation, and depending on the bacteria, inflammation, and this can actually lead to a lot of the gas, the chronic bloating, constipation, or a lot of those issues. And they're going, what is happening? I'm eating healthy, but I still have these gut issues. What is really going on? Well, your microbiome is off. That's what's really going on there. It came off. It became dysbiotic or imbalanced in some point of your life, whenever that was. We talked about it, emotional stress, dietary stress. Maybe there's a trigger you're not aware of. Maybe there is something environmental and you're like, I got everything checked in, but hey, like toxins can be a real thing. I've seen that quite a bit when running testing for people who feel like they've addressed everything and they come back and there's, heavy metals in their body. There's a ton of mold in their body and different things like that. So we still want to look at what is off with the gut. And for some people, too, if their microbiome, let's just say is so low in diversity, meaning there's not a whole lot of different types of good bacteria in the gut. Now let's kind of go the opposite. So you have bacteria overgrowth, or you just have very low diversity, which we see a lot with people who eat a very like processed foods diet with like no fibers, right? I eat my sandwich every single day with white bread, with like salami and mayo, and that's what I eat for work. And I have my bag of potato chips and my soda. And then my breakfast is a piece of toast with Nutella. Then I got my coffee with the coffee creamer in it. Then I go on to dinner and I have my potatoes, or I grab some Taco Bell. Like, let's just say, like, again, that's the standard American diet for a lot of people.
I'm laughing. It's true.
Their diversity in their gut between good bacteria is going to be very, very low. Now, let's say this person starts to, I want to eat healthy. I want to clean up my diet. And they start to notice all these gut issues. They're like, I didn't even have this when I was eating all these bad foods. So what happened here? Well, they had very low diversity in their gut because of how their diet has been for quite a long time. They started to eat real whole food with a lot of fiber, but because they don't have the right type of bacteria, their body isn't really ready to digest and break down a lot of those foods. So they kind of find themselves in this catch-22 where they actually need to work on slowly building up the diversity in their gut and incorporating more of these foods. But a lot of people just struggle to because they haven't worked on their microbiome for a long time.
I was going to ask you that. Is there almost like a hazard, if you will, if you just like, if someone listened to this and they're like, I'm going to make some changes to my diet tomorrow, and they just go like 100% the opposite way, that's probably sounds like it's hazardous, right? Like you kind of want to slowly do this.
I would say like eat real whole food, like definitely transition into that, but don't overdo the fiber.
Yeah.
That would be like my caveat. So fiber is one of those things that you can kind of build up to. For a lot of people, and even when I learned about gut health, and one of the biggest mistakes I made as I was just getting into this is like, the gut loves fiber. It's great for your gut. And I ate a ton of fiber. And again, I had bacteria overgrowth. So what did that do? More gut issues, more bloating. And this is supposed to be helping. Take more fiber. That's what most doctors say, right? And it makes it worse and worse and worse. So there's also a big difference between a gut healing diet and a gut health diet. And most people online, influencers who talk about gut health, they're not talking about a gut healing diet. for somebody who has gut issues. So when you're on a gut healing diet, you are more restrictive. This is because your gut is off. You have hopefully gotten a diagnosis. If not, you may need to, but you have gut symptoms. And what we need to do is actually work on healing the gut. It doesn't tolerate a lot of foods right now. You have bacteria overgrowth or low diversity. We want to eat a simple whole foods diet, but probably a little bit more simple, right, at this point in time. So a lot of people call this restrictive during this phase, but I always give the analogy of like if you broke your leg, right, you'd give it a rest for a period of time. If your gut is that off, like mine was, you want to give the gut a chance to rest and heal, and not have to break down a ton of fiber and things like that. You want to give it a good amount of nutrition, real whole food. You want to support it with some good gut healing supplements, glutamine, aloe vera, licorice root, omega fatty acids. And you may do that for a period of time before you transition to gut health. Now, gut health is now where you're trying to build up the most robust and diverse microbiome. This is when you want the fibers. This is when you're like, give me the probiotics, give me the prebiotics, give me, a lot of fibers in my diet and all the leafy greens and polyphenols, which are like resveratrol and curcumin and quercetin, which help build up your immune system and your microbiome. That's gut health. That's building up a robust microbiome, but you can't do that for somebody whose gut is impaired. Does that make sense?
It does. I actually I take resveratrol. I take curcumin with my turmeric and my smoothie and stuff like that. But I just think I'm a little out of whack. I think from everything you just said, some healing.
You're signing up with me, guys.
Yeah. All right. Damn, you're good. Yeah. I know. I mean, that's literally that's where I'm at, is like, it's probably the fiber is probably off. It's probably more tweaks than just big changes that need to happen. But I feel like small tweaks would make a massive difference. And going down that path is like, one thing I really wanted to ask you was, what does like feeling good feel like? What should someone feel like that says, I feel good?
Right. And it's kind of even hard to know that if you haven't felt good for most of your life. And what's so cool is about like a lot of my clients who come to see me is they create this new threshold of what it means to feel good. Because a lot of people are surviving. Like they are surviving throughout the day. Like, oh my gosh, how can I get through this day so I can get to the end of the day so I can relax, so I can wake it up and do it all over again. It's like, that's not what it's about. Like we're not meant to be surviving, and that's where I'm passionate about having an abundance life. Is it's not even just like being physically fit, because that was really the only area I focused on a long time ago. It is actually having a fit heart, body, mind. Abundance is not even just, finances. A lot of people think about that and making money. It's actually quality relationships. It's your connectedness with God. It's your balanced nervous system and how you can really connect and be intuitive with yourself. All of these things equal an abundance life overall. And that's what really we're after. Now, when we're not feeling good, right? Sometimes we don't even believe in that's even possible. We don't even know what that feels like. We may even think we're good and we don't even know what like we're really capable of stepping into. Now I've been on the extreme low, so I know what bad feels like. And I also now know what it feels like to feel like really, really good and to be like thriving every single day in creativity and just like wake up before my alarm clock with full of energy and ideas and jumping into my day and being on podcasts and just like love and life and just like feeling good about like everything. Now, 3 things people can really look at, I'd say, that are good indicators of like health. One is digestion. Digestion is going to be a big indicator. Are you going to the bathroom consistently? Do you not have like chronic bloating where you look 6 months pregnant at the end of every single day? So digestion. 2, energy levels. How is your energy levels throughout the day? Do you need to rely on, 2, 3, 4 cups of coffee to get through the day? Do you find yourself chronically having to take a nap? What are your natural energy levels like throughout the day? And then 3 is going to be your anxiety levels or your nervous system. So are you somebody who is constantly anxious? Are you somebody who always just feels like off and a ton of anticipation? Checking in with yourself in those 3 areas, I like counting them here, those 3 areas are usually a pretty good indicator to check in with yourself. If you have pretty good energy throughout the day, that you don't have to rely on a lot of coffee or other stimulants and taking a bunch of naps. Now, I do think there's a benefit to taking maybe like a 20-minute nap each day.
Sounds
Ben
nice to me.
Greenfield, who I'm a fan of, sometimes does that. I rarely get to. Someone who's sleeping consistently throughout the night, pretty good digestion, anxiety levels are pretty low. I'd say you're in pretty good health.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot to look at there. Here I am thinking I'm like super healthy and I'm just killing it. And for the most part, I am, but I think digestion needs a little bit of work. I think energy definitely needs some work. I actually, a few years back, went and got my thyroid tested because I was like, I am overall low energy. I push through a lot. I feel myself
Mm.
like I am an overachiever. And I saw you made a tweet on that. But I find myself, I'm grinding through a lot just because of who I am. I'm mentally strong. I'm very disciplined. I do wish my energy level was at that same level. So
Mm.
because you just said that, it really makes me wonder.
And
It's
sometimes it can be fine-tuned little tweaks too on that side. Like your sleep is not where it needs to be, and the energy really is a byproduct of you're not really sleeping very well. So maybe it's tracking your REM sleep and your deep sleep. And maybe there is something like too much caffeine. And I see people constantly getting this cycle of I'm relying on caffeine, but then I'm really not getting good sleep. So I'm tired and I'm relying on too much caffeine. And trust me, I was a caffeine addict for a long time. I got to have at least a little bit of caffeine in the morning. I'm not a no caffeine person, but I like tried to slowly pull back on overdoing it. And it's hard for a while, for sure.
when do you cut off the caffeine? At what point of the day?
Um, I'll usually do 1 cup of coffee in the morning. And then if I need something else or I want something, it's more of a want, honestly. Usually by 1 o'clock, I'll have a matcha green tea and I'll
Okay.
switch to tea actually at that time because I think matcha tea it just affects the body a little bit differently than coffee tea.
Excellent. I have that in the house too, but I've yet to really toy with how to use that throughout my day. So I'm interested in doing that. And as far as sleep goes, do you do anything for sleep? Do you take anything, magnesium or anything like that?
Yeah, I have my sleep hacks super dialed in for sure because I actually dealt with insomnia for a good while. I've dealt with it. Oh goodness.
Which is
But that's
so
why
interesting because we see where you are today, right? So it makes me appreciate you more today with who you are because you've
Mhm.
gone through all this.
The biggest thing I learned about sleep for me overall is, if I don't feel in alignment and in some area of my life, I have a very, very, very sensitive nervous system, which is a blessing because it always keeps me on the right path and things like doing the right thing. And that's like a gift from God. But if there's anything that I feel like is off in alignment, like it messes with my nervous system a bit there. And I've noticed that's the biggest thing that can really, really impact my sleep. And I think sometimes we do neglect that. So for me, um, I'd say that's one of the big things, but actual sleep routine side of it all is I have to have a cutoff time with work. I'm an entrepreneur. I will bust my butt. I will work until, I am burnt out. I had to like give myself some boundaries to protect some of my physical and my mental health to protect my sleep so I can continue to do the work because if I'm not sleeping, I'm not creative, I don't have ideas, I can't show up and then it just dominoes from there. So usually around, at least a good couple hours before bed, I turn it off.
Hmm.
I try, I'm not perfect all the time and it's not about perfection, but I disconnect from work. I put my phone up, no more work. I don't watch TV. I don't put any kind of blue screens on. Sometimes there's emergencies and things where I am on my phone. Um, just because when you're an entrepreneur, there's always emergencies in the business side, but I disconnect. And this is where, I have an early dinner. I try to not eat 2 hours before bed. I have a good wind down routine. So I like to read a little bit as I'm transitioning in. I dim the lights around my house because our body follows a circadian rhythm. So if we keep all the bright lights on in the house, our brain's going to want to stay awake. Our cortisol levels are going to want to stay elevated. I was even the weirdo in my house I lived in California before I moved back out here to Dallas. I installed incandescent red lights in all of the bathrooms and in my kitchen. And incandescent red light actually mimics fire. So if you turn, had two light switches. I would turn on the incandescent once the sun would go down, and it looked like a haunted house inside
That's
from
awesome.
the outside with like the red light. It was kind of like cool, like vibey. I turn on like soothing meditation music, and this is like my evening routine as I kind of slowly transition into bed. And now I'm at the point where like I just notice myself getting tired and ready to doze off. Supplements, I've gone on and off of magnesium. I'm not currently taking it, but I have definitely taken magnesium, glycinate for sleep, citrate more for just consistency with going to the bathroom every single day. I love L-theanine. 200 milligrams of L-theanine before bed can actually put your brain in a theta state. So kind of stabilize some of your brain waves. And I've dabbled a little bit with some 5-HTP before bed. I do think my favorite though is a little bit of L-theanine overall.
This is awesome. Love it. And so when are you getting your workouts in? Because obviously that's a huge part of what you do.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of who I am. I get my workouts in a lot of time. Honestly, when we're done here, probably going to go to the gym, get a workout in. Yes, it's kind of late, which also forces me to eat kind of late. And then I go to sleep having eaten probably an hour to an hour and a half before going to bed. So I'm curious to know what your schedule is.
Yeah, I was the evening worker outer for a long time. That was like where I felt like I just had the most strength. I also love the transition, right? From like work, it gives you like that little middle space of like, I'm exiting work, I'm going to work out. And when I come back, I'm not going to be doing work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've really had to dial this in, I had to make it in my morning time. So I have my morning routine pretty dialed in. I actually just gave an entire talk earlier today about how to create a high performance morning routine. And I move my body every single day. Sometimes it's short and sweet, where it's 30 minutes of movement in my garage, but I'm still getting something in. With a little bit of dumbbells, my yoga mat in there, trying to build out my actual home gym here shortly, or on days where I can, push back my work a little bit there and then maybe work a little bit later. Since I run my own business, I'll try to get in my workout just first thing in the morning, get to the gym, 6:30, 7 a.m. at the latest, get back home by 8 a.m., 8:15, and I'm into my work by 8:45, 9.
And what time are you going to bed?
I'm a grandma. I go to bed I'm winding down by 7:30. It is glorious.
Wow.
I am winding down by 7:30. And then it's like 8:30. And I'm now on my couch. I have all the lights off. I've already eaten dinner. I got my little light on my book. And then probably by 9 o'clock, I'm like drifting into sleep. It's glorious.
Do you just turn down going out to dinner? It's like left and right. Like, I'm sleeping.
Well, no,
that night.
I mean, I don't go out a whole lot to dinner. Of course, this is, we want to be intention focused instead of objective focused. So yeah, there's days I deviate from it 100%.
I'm just messing
where I'm not doing that routine, but that's what I try to do most of the time.
Here's a question for you. What is almost like a hack that you have in your diet that perhaps satiates a craving or is sweet to you or feels good to you, almost feels like a dessert or something that is just delicious that you have, but it's also healthy? What's something that you eat like that?
Dark chocolate.
Yeah.
That's probably my one thing. Dark chocolate.
Every day?
No, not every day, but I'd say at least a piece. Like right before this podcast, I had a piece of dark chocolate. But the trick is to get it dark enough where you're not going to overeat it, because like sugar is so easy to want to overeat. I love the eating involved dark chocolate, and I usually get 80% or higher, where it's good. I enjoy it, sometimes even 90%, but I'm not going to sit there and eat a whole bar.
Yeah.
So like one, 2 piece if it's like one of those days, but that usually satisfies me.
Okay. Yeah. A few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I got the 100% cacao wafers. Definitely bitter. But I kind of enjoyed it.
You won't overeat those though.
No, I had like 5 or 6. Yeah. The little wafers, and they were good. I mean, it's not like, yeah, you're right. It's not like Halloween candy and I'm going to eat the whole thing by,
You won't be like, oh my God, I got to have more kind of a thing. And that's
exactly.
what we see with a lot of those foods. It's like, oh my God, just a bit more. It's like literally like a drug.
Well, like this, like you said, right? It's like people, it's their jobs to get you to eat. What's what the bliss point, right? That's what it's called, the bliss point.
Mhm.
It's their jobs. Man, that stuff is like crack to me. But this is, I don't know. I can keep you for the next 10 hours and just keep asking questions. You're welcome back anytime. This has been awesome. I love your story. I love everything that came from it. I got one more question for you. You are, it's pretty easy to see when you log on your Instagram, your website, incredibly ripped, incredibly in shape. People probably look at you or like, I want your abs. So what do you say to people that are like, I want abs like yours?
Mm-hmm. I probably asked that question, I don't know, for the last decade, because I will say I've not lost my abs in 10 years. I think since I got out of college, like I never have lost my abs once I got into bodybuilding, and I'm by no means 8% body fat anymore, but I still have abs for sure. Um, for me, like my routine and everything I do is just a way of life. Like when people ask me that question, it's I love myself too much to not do the things that I do for myself.
Hmm.
I love myself too much. And for me, yes, there's been a part where there was a time in my life I got so much, almost too much identity in that where it became unhealthy. But it is a big part of my identity that I am an athlete and I am a healthy person. And that is how I identify myself. And I even remember one day I was in the elevator and a guy asked me a similar question. He's like, how do you stay so consistent working out? How do you stay so fit all the time? And I was like, man, I don't know. Like, it's just, this has been my way of life. I'm an athlete. And I noticed the difference between my question and his question is he was saying, how do you stay consistent working out? And I said to him back, I said, I'm an athlete. So mine was really who I am. I'm an athlete. I'm a healthy person. This is what I do. This is a non negotiable for me. My morning routine isn't work for me. My morning routine adds to my life. My evening routine, I love it. The way I eat, it fuels me. I enjoy the food that I eat every single day. It adds to every single area of my life. I love the gym. Like I said, it's my therapy. This for me is a way of my life. It is not restriction. It is not something that I have to force myself to do. It's something I get to do. It's something I love to do because I love myself. And I think for somebody who wants to like create the body and the physique they want, I'd say, let's not look at it from that lens. Like, right? What kind of person do you want to be? And that ends up being the byproduct. My abs, my physique is a byproduct of how I live every single day and how I take care of myself. So I think it's a little bit of a different question.
That's an awesome answer, though. It's a great perspective. And I feel like you can be a mindset coach as well. If you're not already, why not just
I
add
am a
that to the list?
mindset coach.
There you go. So you are an everything coach. It's unbelievable, but rightfully so, right? Like some people are the master of none because they try to tackle everything. And I completely understand why you're that as well. For people that want to get in touch with you or connect with you or follow you, please let people know how to find you.
Yeah, you guys can check out my website. It's my name, rachelscheer.com. It's spelled like Rachel's cheer. So there's like a C in there. People thought I was a cheerleader. I'm not a cheerleader. Rachelscheer.com. We actually do a free 30-minute call if you want to learn a little bit more about what my practice is all about, even though you heard so much about the podcast today, what our approach would look like for you specifically, because that's really important with how customized it is. You can follow me on Instagram, Rachel Scheer. My practice is at Rachel Scheer Nutrition. And then I have a podcast, which is Scheer Madness.
It's
You
an
can
awesome,
check that out on
awesome name.
iTunes or YouTube. Yeah, Scheer Madness.
That's an awesome name. And real quick, talk about your gut health repair program as well.
Yeah. So my gut health repair program I created is kind of like a secondary approach for people who couldn't do all of the testing, right? Most people want to do all the testing. That's like the gold standard if they could do this entire approach, but it's very much like super customized, comprehensive. And I wanted to be able to help as many people as possible. So I created my gut health repair program. And after doing this for so long, me and my practice, we've like help probably over 3,000 people at this point.
Wow.
I know pretty much what someone needs to do to heal their gut. Most people. Now, there's of course outliers and everything. But I have a really good, database of this is what it takes to heal the gut, going through a gut healing protocol, addressing the gut lining, bacteria overgrowth, addressing the lifestyle factors, the supplement protocols, transitioning you into gut health, supporting and rebuilding back up the microbiome, and then even the mindset coaching that goes along with it, because the whole person must heal for the gut to function optimally. So that's why I do talk so much about mindset overall with everything that I do. So that's meant to be more of like a group coaching option, kind of self-implementation, walking everybody through a gut healing protocol overall, but it does not have all the testing in it.
Okay. Well, regardless, it seems like it's well worth anybody's time to reach out and work with you one way or another. I see the benefit for sure. And one last question. So you have Raleigh coming up in March for your speaking engagement, which I would absolutely love to go and perhaps even say hello. That'd be wonderful.
You should.
I would love to. It's only like 10 minutes from my house. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll message you on the side and get more details about that. But what else do you have coming up in the near future people can expect from you?
I'm starting business coaching, which is something that I feel like found me ultimately with this evolution that I'm in, which is really actually called the evolution. My involved mentorship. So, for people who've gone through their own healing stories, I am helping them take their pain to power story. Maybe they already have a business that they've started already, turn that into their mission, walk them through every steps that I've really done to create the structure, acquisition, everything that need to create a powerful, impact-driven business to create income impact in people's lives. Because I think that's what healing is really about. When we can go through our own healing journey, take that, turn it outward, and now help other people do the same and get paid for it. Like that's the best job you can ever have. And it's not even a job anymore. It's a passion.
So awesome. You're a hell of an entrepreneur.
I love it.
Bravo. Congratulations on everything. I think you're absolutely incredible. Your advice is amazing. You're going to change my life starting tonight. Period. Everything you've said. I've wrote down so many notes. I'm going to listen to this over and over again. So Rachel Scheer, thank you so much for your time. It's been a blast. I just can't thank you enough. Absolutely incredible. Thank you very much.
It's been an honor. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.